It is more serious than we realize. Acts 2:17, and it shall come to pass in the last days, says God, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Well, I fit the last part there. I qualify for that, being 76 years old. And the Lord did give me a dream. On the night of March the 17th, 2023, while on vacation, I dreamed this dream. And I tried to pass it off as just a dream, but God would not let me. Church had been dismissed. In Everly, my 3-year-old great-granddaughter was outside playing, and I was watching her as she played. There were a few other people outside milling around and talking as well. She slipped and fell, scraping her side, thigh, and foot. She cried a little, and I picked her up. Her injuries did not seem to be too serious at first, but the more I checked her out, I began to realize her injuries were more serious than I first thought. She had fluid squirting out of a hole in her arm, and I thought maybe her arm was broken. I called for her mother, but she did not realize it was serious. She just waved it off and went on with those she was talking to. I cried out for anyone, but no one came. Then it looked like her foot might be broken. So I cradled her in my arms and carried her into the church to get my wife to take her to the hospital. But my wife had already left, so I had no way to get her to the doctor. There were 4 or 5 men up at the front of the church talking. I tried to get their attention. They looked my way, but went back to their conversation. They did not realize the seriousness of the situation. And for some reason, at this point, I had lost my voice, so all I could do was point. I laid Everly on the pew, still trying to draw attention to the seriousness of her injuries and the situation. One of the men walked to the pew in front of us, picked up his Bible, glanced at her, and walked away. At this point, realizing I could not get anyone's attention and get them to realize how serious things were, I picked up Everly, cradled her in my arms the best I could, and walked from the church to the Jackson Parish Hospital, which is about 2 miles away. I went in the emergency room and laid her on a table. There were about 7 or 8 doctors and nurses in the ER, but they were all huddled in a room talking. No one paid her any attention. I went to the door, got one nurse's attention, and pointed to Everly on the table. She looked at her and went back to talking. I kept pointing. Remember, I have no voice. 2 or 3 times the nurse started that way, but turned and went back to where the others were talking. Then I realized that there was a bad cut on her foot and leg. By now her mother and dad had come in, and they were sitting at a table in the ER having a casual conversation with some other people. I pointed to Everly to get them to realize how serious the situation was. Her dad looked at me, then glanced at Everly, and turned back to talking with those at the table. Finally, a nurse came and took Everly into a room. In a few minutes, she came out of the room, walked up to me with tears in her eyes and said, "The doctor almost lost her, but he kept her heart beating. Just hope for the best." She then walked away, and that was the end of the dream. As I began to contemplate this over the next few days and God began to speak to my heart, looking back, every situation was the same. No one ever stopped what they were doing to check on her and see how serious the situation was. They just thought that I was overreacting. Spiritually speaking, God was saying, we are all too busy doing our own thing to realize how serious the situation is. God keeps pointing at world conditions, all the lost souls, all the hurting people, backsliders, our lost loved ones, the spiritual condition of so many, His soon coming, and on we could go. We look that way, but then turn back to what we are doing. We are those people in the ER that had the ability and means to do something, but just couldn't stop what they were doing to help. We have what the injured and wounded people of the world need. We have the means to help them before it is too late. How many times has God pointed us in a direction? We start that way, but turn and go back to our unconcerned friends. We need to be aware of the seriousness of the hour in which we live, the seriousness of world events, and the seriousness of rampant sin as Satan claims more souls every day. God has done too much for us to ignore Him. He said in Isaiah 48:13, I will work, and who shall let it? The times are more serious than we realize. And just like Everlay, no one saw the urgency to do anything until it was almost too late. We need to do something now, for it will soon be too late. It is more serious than we realize.